The Silicon Shadow. A William Harlow mystery, a Raymond Chandler tribute. The rain hadn't stopped in 3 days. It drummed against my office window like impatient fingers, each drop carrying the weight of another broken promise in this city of broken dreams. Los Angeles in 2025 was still the same beast it had always been, just wearing different clothes. Electric cars instead of gas guzzlers, holographic billboards instead of neon, but the same old sins festering underneath. I was nursing my third cup of synthetic coffee when she walked in. They always walk in when the rain's at its worst, like the weather summons them from whatever shadows they've been hiding in. This one was different, though. She moved with the kind of confidence that comes from having more money than God and twice as many secrets. Mr. Harlow. Her voice had that smoky quality that makes smart men do stupid things. I need your help. I gestured to the cracked leather chair across from my desk. That's what the sign on the door says, though most people call first. She settled into the chair like she owned it. Mid-30s, platinum blonde hair that cost more than my monthly rent, and eyes the color of winter ice. Her designer coat probably cost more than my car was worth back when it was new. I'm Victoria Sterling, she said, like the name should mean something to me. It did. Sterling Tech was one of the big players in the AI revolution, the kind of company that made algorithms that could predict your next thought before you had it. Victoria Sterling was the widow of the company's founder, Marcus Sterling, who'd taken a header off his Malibu mansion 6 months ago. The police called it suicide. The insurance company wasn't so sure. I know who you are, Mrs. Sterling. What I don't know is why you're sitting in my office instead of letting your lawyers handle whatever's eating at you. She reached into her purse, genuine leather, probably from some endangered species, and pulled out a photograph. The paper was old-fashioned, the kind nobody used anymore unless they wanted to make a point. The image showed a man in his 40s with salt and pepper hair and the kind of smile that sold 1 million products. My husband, she said. Marcus didn't kill himself, Mr. Harlow. He was murdered. I'd heard that song before. Grieving widows, insurance payouts, and the desperate need to believe that someone they loved couldn't have chosen to leave them behind. But something in her voice made me look twice at the photograph. The police investigated. They found no evidence of foul play. The police, she said with the kind of contempt that only comes from having enough money to buy better help, don't understand the tech world. They see a successful man with depression, and they write it off as another Silicon Valley casualty. And you think different? She leaned forward, and I caught a whiff of expensive perfume mixed with something else. Fear, maybe, or desperation. I know different. Marcus was on the verge of a breakthrough that would have changed everything. Something called Project Mirror. The name hit me like ice water. I'd heard whispers about Mirror in the darker corners of the internet, the places where corporate secrets go to die. Allegedly, it was an AI system that could not just predict human behavior, but influence it. Mind control for the digital age. Project Mirror was just a rumor, I said. Was it? She reached into her purse again and pulled out a data chip, the kind they used for storing encrypted information. This contains everything Marcus was working on before he died. I tried to access it, but it's locked behind encryption I can't break. I took the chip, feeling its weight. Barely anything, but heavy with possibility. What makes you think Mirror got your husband killed? 3 days before he died, Marcus told me he'd discovered something terrible about the project. He said someone was using it for purposes he never intended. He was going to expose them. To who? The FBI. He had a meeting scheduled for the day after he died. That was interesting. The Bureau didn't get involved in corporate disputes unless there were national security implications. If Marcus Sterling had been ready to turn over his life's work to the feds, he must have discovered something big. My fee is $500 a day plus expenses, I said, and I work alone. She stood up, smoothing down her coat. Money isn't an object, Mr. Harlow. I just want the truth. After she left, I sat staring at the data chip for a long time. The rain kept drumming against the window, and somewhere in the distance, I could hear the hum of the city's electric grid. Victoria Sterling was hiding something. They always were. But that didn't mean her husband hadn't been murdered. I slipped the chip into my computer and ran a basic analysis. The encryption was military grade, the kind that would take my ancient hardware about 6 months to crack, but I knew someone who could do it faster. Tommy Chen ran a computer repair shop in Koreatown that was really a front for the kind of services you couldn't advertise in the Yellow Pages. We'd worked together before, back when I was still carrying a badge and he was just another hacker looking to make a quick buck. Now we were both older, grayer, and maybe a little wiser. "William Harlow," he said when I walked into his shop. "Still playing detective? Still playing computer whiz?" He grinned, his gold tooth catching the light from his workbench. "What you got for me this time?" I handed him the chip. "Military-grade encryption. I need to know what's on it." Tommy plugged the chip into a machine that looked like it belonged on the space station. Numbers scrolled across multiple screens while he typed commands faster than I could follow. "This is heavy stuff, William. Sterling Tech's latest and greatest. You sure you want to open this particular can of worms?" "How long?" "Give me 2 hours, and William—" He looked up from his screens. "Be careful with this one. Sterling Tech has connections you don't want to mess with." I spent the next 2 hours walking the streets of Koreatown, thinking about Victoria Sterling and her dead husband. The official story was simple enough. Successful businessman, history of depression, takes a dive off his own balcony. But the timing bothered me. 3 days before an FBI meeting, right when he was about to expose something about Project Mirror. When I got back to Tommy's shop, he had the chip decrypted and a worried expression on his face. "You're not going to like what's on here," he said, handing me a printout, "but you're definitely going to find it interesting." The documents were a mixture of technical specifications and corporate communications. Project Mirror was real, all right, and it was exactly what the rumors said. An AI system capable of influencing human behavior through targeted psychological manipulation. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the client list. Sterling Tech had been developing Mirror for a consortium of clients that read like a who's who of corporate America and international intelligence agencies. They weren't just building a mind control system, they were selling it to the highest bidders. "There's something else," Tommy said. "I found traces of another user accessing this data recently. Someone with high-level credentials at Sterling Tech." "How recently?" 2 days ago, right around the time Mrs. Sterling would have visited you." I felt that familiar itch between my shoulder blades that meant I was being played. Victoria Sterling had told me she couldn't break the encryption, but someone with her level of access at the company had been poking around the files. Either she was lying, or someone else at Sterling Tech was very interested in what Marcus had been working on. "Thanks, Tommy. Send me the bill." "This one's on the house," he said. "But William, watch your back. This mirror thing, it's the kind of secret people kill for." I spent the rest of the day reading through Marcus Sterling's files. The man had been thorough, documenting every aspect of Project Mirror's development. The AI system could analyze an individual's digital footprint, social media posts, shopping habits, search history, even biometric data from smart devices, and create a psychological profile accurate enough to predict behavior with 97% accuracy. But prediction was just the first step. The real breakthrough was influence. By subtly manipulating the information a target received, slightly altering search results, tweaking social media feeds, even adjusting the content of news articles in real time, Mirror could nudge people towards specific decisions or beliefs. It was insidious and brilliant and absolutely terrifying. The client list was even worse. Defense contractors, political consulting firms, foreign intelligence services, and multinational corporations all had their names on Mirror's subscriber rolls. They weren't just buying a product, they were buying the ability to control human thoughts and actions on a massive scale. Marcus Sterling had created a monster, and someone had killed him to keep it secret. But who? The list of people with motive was longer than my arm. Any one of Mirror's clients would have reasons to want Sterling silenced. The question was which one had acted on those reasons. That's when I noticed something odd in the financial records. Sterling Tech had been receiving payments from a shell company called Digital Horizons, LLC. The amounts were substantial, millions of dollars transferred over the past year. but there was no record of what services Sterling Tech was providing in return. I ran Digital Horizons through my database contacts. The company was registered in Delaware, which meant it could have been owned by anyone from a tech startup to a Russian oligarch. But the timing of the payments was interesting. They'd started right after Marcus Sterling had begun having second thoughts about Project Mirror. Someone had been paying Sterling Tech extra money to keep developing Mirror, despite Marcus's objections. And when Marcus threatened to go to the FBI, that same someone had decided he was too much of a liability to keep alive. The next morning, I drove out to Sterling Tech's headquarters in Culver City. The building was a gleaming glass tower that rose from the urban sprawl like a chrome and steel middle finger pointed at the sky. Security was tight. Biometric scanners, armed guards, and enough surveillance cameras to make Big Brother jealous. I wasn't planning to break in. I just wanted to get a feel for the place. Maybe talk to some of Marcus Sterling's former colleagues. Sometimes the best leads came from casual conversations with people who didn't realize they had valuable information. The lobby was all marble floors and abstract art, the kind of sterile luxury that corporations use to intimidate visitors. I walked up to the reception desk, where a young woman with augmented reality contact lenses was probably seeing a dozen different information streams while pretending to pay attention to me. "I'm here to see Dr. Elizabeth Chen," I said, pulling a name from the employee directory I'd found online. "She's expecting me." The receptionist's eyes flickered as she accessed her internal systems. "I don't show an appointment for Dr. Chen today." She asked me to stop by. Something about Marcus Sterling's research. That got her attention. Her eyes focused on me with sudden intensity. "I'll need to verify your identity and the nature of your business." "Of course." I handed her a business card. "I'm investigating Mr. Sterling's death on behalf of his widow." She studied the card like it might explode. "Please have a seat, Mr. Harlow. Someone will be with you shortly." I didn't have to wait long. Within 5 minutes, a security guard who looked like he moonlighted as a professional wrestler was escorting me to an elevator. We rode up in silence to the 15th floor, where he handed me off to a woman in an expensive suit who introduced herself as the company's head of legal affairs. "Mr. Harlow," she said as we walked down a corridor lined with awards and corporate portraits. "I understand you're looking into Marcus Sterling's unfortunate death." "That's right. His widow has some questions about the circumstances. I'm afraid the company can't discuss the details of our former CEO's personal life. Privacy concerns, you understand?" We stopped at a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a panoramic view of Los Angeles. The city stretched out below us, like a circuit board, all gleaming lines and blinking lights. "I'm not interested in his personal life," I said. "I'm interested in Project Mirror." Her poker face was good, but not perfect. I caught the slight tightening around her eyes, the way her hand moved unconsciously toward her phone. She knew about Mirror, and she was worried about what I might know. "I'm not familiar with that project," she said. "Really?" "Because according to Marcus Sterling's files, Mirror was the company's most important development program. Strange that the head of legal wouldn't know about it. Mr. Sterling worked on many projects. I couldn't possibly keep track of all of them." I pulled out my phone and pretended to check my notes. "Digital Horizons LLC. Ring any bells?" This time the reaction was stronger. She actually took a step back, and I could see her calculating how much trouble I might be able to cause. "I think this meeting is over," she said. "I think you're right." The security guard escorted me back to the lobby, but I'd learned what I came for. Sterling Tech was definitely hiding something about Project Mirror, and they were scared enough to lie about it. The question was whether they were scared of me or of whoever was really pulling the strings. I was walking back to my car when someone called my name. I turned to see a young woman in her 20s, Asian, wearing the kind of casual clothes that meant she worked in the tech sector. She was nervous, glancing around like she expected corporate security to come bursting out of the building. "You're the detective asking about Marcus Sterling?" she said. "Depends on who's asking." "I'm Jenny Liu. I worked on Marcus's team before he died." She looked around again, then moved closer. "Can we talk somewhere private? There are things you need to know about Project Mirror." We ended up at a coffee shop 6 blocks away from Sterling Tech, the kind of place where freelancers worked on their laptops and nobody paid attention to anyone else's conversations. Jenny ordered a triple espresso, and sat with her back to the wall. Marcus was my mentor, she said. He hired me straight out of grad school, taught me everything I know about AI development. He was a good man, Mr. Harlow. He really believed technology could make the world better. But something changed. She nodded. About a year ago, the company started getting pressure from outside investors to accelerate Mirror's development. Marcus was uncomfortable with how fast they wanted to move, but he went along with it because the funding was too good to pass up. What kind of pressure? At first, it was just timeline stuff. Deploy sooner, test on larger populations, that kind of thing. But then they started asking for specific modifications, ways to make the psychological influence more aggressive, methods for targeting specific demographic groups. Who was asking for these modifications? Jenny looked into her coffee cup like it might have answers. That's where it gets complicated. The requests came through official channels, but Marcus started to suspect they originated from someone outside the company, someone with access to our development roadmap but not officially involved in the project. Any idea who? Marcus thought it might be one of our board members, someone with connections to the intelligence community or defense contractors. He started investigating on his own, trying to trace the source of the outside pressure. And that's when he started having second thoughts about the project. More than second thoughts. He was horrified by what Mirror had become. The original concept was benign, maybe helping people make better financial decisions or encouraging healthier lifestyle choices. But what it turned into, she shuddered. It was a weapon, Mr. Harlow, a way to control people's thoughts and actions without them even knowing it. So he decided to go to the FBI. He was going to turn over everything, technical specifications, client lists, communications with the outside investors. He said he couldn't live with what they created. And 3 days later, he was dead. Jenny's eyes filled with tears. The official story is suicide, but I knew Marcus. He wouldn't have killed himself. He had too much fight in him, too much belief that he could fix things. Who else knew about his plans to contact the FBI? Just a few people on the development team. And, she hesitated, and Victoria Sterling. Marcus told her everything. He said she had a right to know what kind of business she'd be inheriting. That was interesting. Victoria had conveniently omitted that detail when she hired me. She'd presented herself as a grieving widow looking for the truth, but it sounded like she already knew more about her husband's death than she'd let on. Is there anything else you can tell me about Project Mirror? Any detail that might help me figure out who wanted Marcus dead? Jenny reached into her purse and pulled out a small device that looked like a modified smartphone. This is a Mirror prototype. Marcus gave it to me the day before he died, told me to hide it somewhere safe. He said it was evidence of what the project had become. I took the device, surprised by how ordinary it looked. What does it do? It's a portable version of the Mirror system, pointed at someone, and it can analyze their psychological profile in real time, feed them targeted information through their own devices to influence their behavior. Marcus called it pocket mind control. The implications were staggering. If this technology fell into the wrong hands, hell, if it fell into anyone's hands, the consequences could reshape society as we knew it. No wonder someone had been willing to commit murder to protect it. Why are you giving this to me, I asked. Because Marcus trusted you to find the truth. He mentioned your name in his notes, said you were one of the few honest cops he'd ever met. That was news to me. I'd never met Marcus Sterling when I was on the force, but apparently he'd been keeping tabs on me. It made me wonder what else he'd known about the people involved in his case. Jenny stood up, gathering her things. Be careful, Mr. Harlow. Whoever killed Marcus has a lot of resources and no conscience. They've already murdered one person to protect their secret. They won't hesitate to kill again. After she left, I sat in the coffee shop thinking about what I'd learned. Victoria Sterling had lied to me about how much she knew. Sterling Tech was under pressure from mysterious outside investors, and somewhere in the mix was a piece of technology that could control human minds. The Mirror prototype sat on the table in front of me, innocuous as a paperweight but potentially more dangerous than a nuclear weapon. I slipped it into my jacket pocket and tried to ignore the weight of it against my ribs. The smart thing would have been to take the prototype to the FBI and let them handle the investigation. But I'd been around long enough to know that smart and right weren't always the same thing. If there were intelligence community connections to Project Mirror, the Bureau might decide to bury the case rather than expose a valuable asset. Besides, I had a client. Victoria Sterling was paying me to find her husband's killer, and despite her deceptions, I intended to earn my fee. But first, I needed to understand exactly what I was dealing with. I drove to the UCLA campus and found Dr. Sarah Martinez in her artificial intelligence lab. Sarah was one of the few people I trusted to analyze the mirror prototype without asking too many questions about where it came from. We'd worked together on a case involving corporate espionage a few years back, and she owed me a favor. "William Harlow," she said when I walked into her lab, "what kind of trouble are you bringing me this time?" "The interesting kind." I showed her the mirror device. "I need you to tell me how this works without connecting it to any networks or activating its core functions." Sarah took the device and turned it over in her hands, her expert eye examining its construction. "This is sophisticated hardware. Custom processors, high-resolution cameras, advanced signal processing capabilities. Where did you get this?" "Can't tell you that. Can you analyze it safely?" "I can put it in a Faraday cage and examine its functions without letting it communicate with the outside world. But William, this looks like military-grade equipment. You sure you want to know what it does?" "I'm sure." She spent the next 2 hours taking the device apart and analyzing its components. When she was finished, her expression was troubled. "This is unlike anything I've ever seen," she said. "It's essentially a portable behavioral analysis and influence system. The cameras can track micro-expressions, body language, even pupil dilation to build a psychological profile of its target. Then it can interface with nearby wireless devices to feed targeted information designed to influence the subject's thoughts and actions." "How effective is it?" "Terrifyingly effective. This system could convince someone to make decisions they would never normally consider. Change their political views, their purchasing habits, even their personal relationships. And the subject would never know they were being manipulated." I felt a chill run down my spine. What would happen if this technology was deployed on a large scale? It would be the end of free will as we know it. Whoever controls this technology could shape public opinion, influence elections, even start wars. It's the ultimate weapon of mass manipulation. That explained why someone had been willing to murder Marcus Sterling. Project Mirror wasn't just a corporate research program. It was a tool that could reshape the balance of power in the world. The question was, who wanted that power badly enough to kill for it? "Sarah, I need you to do one more thing for me. Can you trace the device's manufacturing signature? Find out where it was made and who might have ordered it." She plugged the device into her analysis computer and ran a detailed scan of its components. The processors are custom-made, probably fabricated at a specialized facility. The casing shows signs of being manufactured in small batches. Not mass production. This is definitely prototype-level hardware. Any way to trace it back to its source? Maybe. There are unique identifiers embedded in the processors that might lead us to the fabrication facility. Give me a few more hours and I'll see what I can find. While Sarah worked on tracing the device, I used her computer to dig deeper into Sterling Tech's corporate structure. The company had a complex web of subsidiaries and shell companies that made it difficult to trace the real source of its funding. But one name kept appearing in the financial records: Blackwater Consulting. Blackwater was a private intelligence firm with connections to defense contractors and foreign governments. They specialized in the kind of off-the-books operations that official agencies couldn't be associated with. If they were involved in Project Mirror, it meant the stakes were even higher than I'd thought. I was still researching when Sarah called me over to her workstation. "I found something interesting," she said. "The processors in your device were manufactured at a facility in Arizona that specializes in classified defense projects. But here's the strange part. The manufacturing order was placed by Sterling Tech, not by some outside client." "What does that mean?" "It means Sterling Tech wasn't just developing Mirror for someone else. They were planning to manufacture and deploy it themselves. This device is part of a larger production run." That changed everything. If Sterling Tech was manufacturing Mirror devices in quantity, it meant they weren't just selling the technology, they were planning to use it. But for what purpose? I thanked Sarah and headed back to my office to think through the implications. The picture was becoming clearer, but I still didn't know who had killed Marcus Sterling or why. Victoria Sterling remained the most obvious suspect, but her motives were unclear. She would have inherited control of the company anyway, so why risk murder? Unless she wasn't just inheriting the company, unless she was inheriting Project Mirror itself. I was 3 blocks from my office when I noticed the tail. A black sedan with tinted windows had been behind me since I left UCLA, maintaining a careful distance, but never quite disappearing from my rearview mirror. In the old days, I would have called for backup. Now I was on my own. I took a series of random turns through downtown Los Angeles, using the maze of one-way streets and construction zones to test whether I was really being followed. The sedan stayed with me through every maneuver, confirming my suspicions. Whoever was driving knew what they were doing. They maintained proper surveillance distance, never getting close enough for me to get a clear look at them through the tinted windshield. But they made one mistake. They followed me into a parking garage near Spring Street that had only one exit. I parked on the 3rd level and waited. If they wanted to continue surveillance, they'd have to park in the same garage and follow me on foot when I left. If they wanted to confront me, they'd have to do it here, where there were security cameras and potential witnesses. They chose confrontation. 2 men got out of the sedan and walked toward my car with the confident stride of professionals. Both were wearing dark suits and earpieces, the uniform of corporate security or government agents. The larger of the 2 had a bulge under his jacket that suggested he was carrying more than just business cards. I got out of my car and faced them, keeping my hands visible but ready to reach for the .38 in my shoulder holster. "Mr. Harlow," the smaller man said, "we need to talk." "I'm listening." "You're investigating matters that don't concern you. It would be in everyone's best interest if you discontinued your inquiries. And if I don't?" The larger man stepped forward. "Then we'll have to consider alternative methods of persuasion." I'd been threatened by better men than these 2, but there was something about their calm professionalism that made me take them seriously. They weren't street thugs looking to rough me up. They were operators with resources and authorization to use whatever force they deemed necessary. "Who's paying you?" I asked. "That's not your concern. What should concern you is the safety of yourself and your associates. Dr. Martinez, for example. She has such important research to complete. It would be unfortunate if something happened to her lab." That was a mistake. Threatening Sarah crossed a line that transformed this from a business negotiation into a personal matter. I smiled at them, the kind of smile that had made suspects confess back when I was carrying a badge. "Gentlemen," I said, "you just made this personal." The smaller man reached into his jacket, but he was too slow. I had my .38 out and pointed at his chest before his hand found whatever he was reaching for. "Easy does it," I said. "Let's keep this civilized." "You're making a serious mistake, Harlow." The mistake was threatening my friends. Now I'm going to give you some free advice. Tell whoever sent you that I don't scare easily and I don't back down from bullies. If they want to discuss this matter like civilized adults, they know where to find me. The 2 men exchanged glances, some kind of silent communication passing between them. Then the smaller one nodded. "This isn't over," he said. "I'm counting on it." They walked back to their sedan and drove away, leaving me alone in the parking garage with more questions than answers. But I'd learned something important. I was getting close to something that powerful people wanted to keep hidden. The question was whether I'd live long enough to figure out what it was. I spent the evening in my office, going through Marcus Sterling's files again and trying to piece together the timeline of his death. The official police report was surprisingly thin for such a high-profile case. No witnesses to the fall, no signs of struggle, no evidence of foul play. Marcus Sterling had simply walked out onto his balcony and jumped. But the timing bothered me. According to the coroner's report, Sterling had died sometime between midnight and 2 a.m. on a Tuesday night. That was an odd time for someone to commit suicide. Most people who kill themselves do it during daylight hours when their depression is at its worst. There was something else that didn't fit. According to Jenny Liu, Marcus had been scheduled to meet with the FBI on Wednesday morning. If he was really planning to expose Project Mirror, why would he kill himself the night before? It would have made more sense to wait until after he turned over his evidence, unless someone made sure he never got the chance. I was still thinking about the timeline when my phone rang. The caller ID showed Victoria Sterling's number. Mr. Harlow, I was wondering if you'd made any progress on the case. Some. We need to talk. There are things about your husband's death that don't add up. What kind of things? The kind that are better discussed in person. Can you come to my office? Actually, I was hoping you could come to my house. I have some of Marcus's personal files that might be relevant to your investigation. I checked the time. It was almost 9 p.m., later than I normally made house calls. But Victoria Sterling was paying my bills, and I needed to confront her about the lies she told me. Give me the address. I'll be there in an hour. The Sterling mansion was in Bel Air, the kind of neighborhood where the houses were bigger than most office buildings, and the security systems cost more than most people made in a year. Victoria's place was a modernist masterpiece of glass and steel perched on a hillside overlooking the city. The view from her living room was spectacular. Los Angeles spread out below like a galaxy of lights, the city's grid pattern broken only by the dark spaces of parks and golf courses. It was the kind of view that reminded you how small you were in the grand scheme of things. Beautiful, isn't it? Victoria said, handing me a glass of whiskey. Marcus used to say it was like looking down at the future. Is that why he built Mirror? To control that future? Her hand tightened slightly on her glass. What do you mean? I mean your husband was developing technology that could manipulate human behavior on a massive scale. Someone was paying him extra money through a shell company to accelerate development. And when he threatened to expose the whole operation to the FBI, he ended up dead. Victoria walked to the window and stared out at the city lights. You've been busy, Mr. Harlow. Not busy enough. I still don't know who killed Marcus or why you lied to me about how much you knew. She turned around, and in the dim light of the living room, her face looked older, more tired. I didn't lie. I just didn't tell you everything. Tell me now. She sat down on the couch and took a long drink of whiskey. Marcus came to me 3 days before he died. He was terrified, more scared than I'd ever seen him. He told me about Mirror, about what it could do and who was trying to use it. Who was trying to use it? That's the thing he didn't know. Someone with access to our corporate systems was placing orders for Mirror prototypes and arranging testing protocols, but they were covering their tracks. Marcus couldn't trace the request back to their source. So he decided to go to the FBI. He was going to turn over everything, not just Mirror, but evidence of the shell company payments and the unauthorized prototype manufacturing. He said he couldn't live with what his creation had become, but he never made it to that meeting. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. The night he died, he called me from his study. He said he'd figured out who was behind the Mirror conspiracy, but before he could tell me, the line went dead. 20 minutes later, he was lying on the pavement 40 feet below his balcony. You think someone was in the house with him? I think someone forced him to jump, or pushed him. The police never found any evidence of an intruder, but Marcus had the best security system money could buy. If someone got past it, they knew what they were doing. I finished my whiskey and set the glass on the coffee table. Why didn't you tell me this when you hired me? Because I was scared. If someone could get to Marcus in his own home, what was to stop them from coming after me? I thought if I hired you to investigate his death, maybe you'd find enough evidence to satisfy the insurance company, and I could take the money and disappear. But that's not what happened. The more I thought about it, the more I realized I couldn't just let Marcus's killer go free. He was a good man, Mr. Harlow. He deserved better than to be murdered for trying to do the right thing. I believed her. The emotion in her voice was genuine, and her story fit with what I'd learned from other sources. But there were still pieces missing from the puzzle. Victoria, I need you to think carefully. Did Marcus ever mention any names? Anyone at Sterling Tech or among your business partners who might have had access to the Mirror project? She was quiet for a long moment, staring into her whiskey glass. There was one person, David Chen, our head of security. Marcus had hired him about 6 months before he died. David had connections to the defense industry, and Marcus thought that was valuable given the sensitive nature of our research. What made Marcus suspicious of him? A few things. David had access to all our computer systems including the development servers where Mirror was stored. He also had connections to private military contractors, the kind of people who might be interested in mind control technology. Where is David Chen now? Still working at Sterling Tech, as far as I know. He runs the company's security department. That was interesting. If David Chen was involved in Marcus Sterling's death, why would he stick around? Unless he was waiting for something, or protecting something. I need to talk to him, I said. Victoria grabbed my arm. Be careful, Mr. Harlow. If David is involved in Marcus's death, he won't hesitate to kill again. I left Victoria's mansion with more questions than answers, but at least I had a new lead to follow. David Chen had the access, the connections, and the expertise to steal mirror technology and arrange Marcus Sterling's murder, but I still needed proof. The drive back to my office gave me time to think about the case. 3 people had access to Project Mirror. Marcus Sterling, who was dead, Victoria Sterling, who claimed to be seeking justice for her husband, and David Chen, who had the skills and connections to monetize stolen AI technology. But there was something that didn't fit. If David Chen was selling Mirror to the highest bidder, why hadn't he just waited for Marcus to complete the project? Why risk murder when he could have legally acquired the technology through corporate channels? Unless Marcus had discovered something that threatened more than just the Mirror project. Something that could destroy David Chen's entire operation. The next morning, I drove back to Sterling Tech headquarters. This time, I wasn't planning to go through official channels. I wanted to catch David Chen off guard, see how he reacted when confronted with questions about his boss's death. The employee parking garage was my way in. Corporate security was focused on the main entrances, but they couldn't monitor every employee who came and went through the underground levels. I waited near the elevators until I saw someone with a Sterling Tech badge, then followed them up to the 15th floor. David Chen's office was at the end of a corridor, lined with motivational posters and company awards. The nameplate on his door identified him as Director of Corporate Security, which probably meant he had access to everything from personnel files to research data. I knocked on the door and waited. When it opened, I found myself face to face with a man in his early 40s, Asian, with the kind of build that suggested military training. His suit was expensive, but not flashy, and his handshake was firm without being aggressive. Mr. Harlow, he said, I've been expecting you. That was interesting. Either he was psychic or someone had warned him I was coming. Mind if I come in? Of course, please have a seat. His office was spartanly decorated, a desk, 2 chairs, and a wall of monitors showing security feeds from around the building. No personal photos, no awards, nothing that revealed anything about the man behind the title. I understand you're investigating Marcus Sterling's death, he said, settling behind his desk. That's right. I'm hoping you can tell me about his state of mind in the days before he died. David leaned back in his chair, his expression neutral. Marcus was under a lot of stress. The company was going through rapid expansion, and he was concerned about maintaining security protocols during the growth phase. What kind of security concerns? The usual things: industrial espionage, data theft, corporate sabotage. When you're developing cutting-edge technology, there are always competitors looking to steal your work. Technology like Project Mirror? His reaction was subtle but telling, a slight tightening around his eyes, the way his hands moved to rest flat on his desk. He knew about Mirror, and he was measuring how much I might know. I'm not familiar with that particular project, he said. Really? Because according to company records, Mirror was one of Sterling Tech's most classified programs. Seems like the head of security would know about it. Mr. Harlow, I oversee physical security and personnel screening. I'm not involved in the technical aspects of our research programs. He was lying, but he was good at it. Professional training, probably military or intelligence background, but everyone made mistakes when they were under pressure. Tell me about Digital Horizons LLC, I said. This time the reaction was stronger. He actually shifted in his chair, and I caught a glimpse of what might have been a shoulder holster under his jacket. I'm not familiar with that company. Interesting, because Digital Horizons has been paying Sterling Tech millions of dollars over the past year. You'd think the head of security would know about large financial transactions involving his company. David stood up, walking to the window that overlooked the parking garage. Mr. Harlow, I think this conversation is over. You're asking about matters that are confidential and outside the scope of your investigation. Marcus Sterling's murder is exactly within the scope of my investigation. He turned around and for the first time, his professional mask slipped. Murder? The police ruled it suicide. The police didn't have all the facts. They didn't know about Mirror or Digital Horizons or the FBI meeting that Marcus never made it to. What FBI meeting? I studied his face carefully. Either he was genuinely surprised or he was a better actor than I'd given him credit for. Marcus was planning to turn over evidence of Mirror's illegal applications to the federal authorities. Someone made sure he never got the chance. David walked back to his desk and sat down. Mr. Harlow, I think you're letting your imagination run away with you. Marcus Sterling was a troubled man who took his own life. There's no conspiracy, no murder plot, just a tragic suicide. Then you won't mind if I examine the security footage from the night he died. I'm afraid that footage has been routinely archived. It would take a court order to retrieve it. How convenient. David pressed a button on his desk intercom. Security to my office, please. Calling for backup? I asked. Calling for an escort to help you find your way out of the building. This conversation is over. 2 security guards appeared in the doorway, the same professional types who had escorted me out the day before. They didn't look particularly friendly. Mr. Harlow was just leaving, David said. I stood up and straightened my jacket. This has been educational, Mr. Chen. We should do it again sometime. I don't think that will be necessary. As the security guards escorted me to the elevator, I reflected on what I'd learned. David Chen knew more about Marcus Sterling's death than he was admitting. His reactions to certain questions suggested he was involved in both Project Mirror and Digital Horizons. But I still didn't have enough evidence to prove he was the killer. That was about to change. I was walking to my car when I spotted her. Jenny Liu, the young programmer who had given me the Mirror prototype. She was standing near the parking garage entrance, looking nervous and checking her phone every few seconds. When she saw me, she hurried over. Mr. Harlow, thank God you're here. I tried calling your office, but there was no answer. What's wrong? It's about David Chen. After I talked to you yesterday, I started thinking about the night Marcus died. I remembered something that might be important. We moved away from the building entrance, finding a spot between 2 parked cars where we could talk without being overheard. What did you remember? I was working late that night, debugging some code for a client presentation. Around midnight, I saw David's car leaving the parking garage. That struck me as odd because he usually left the office by 6 p.m. Maybe he had evening plans. That's what I thought at first, but then I checked the building's access logs. David's keycard was used to enter Marcus's residential building at 11:47 p.m. that night. The pieces were falling into place. David Chen had left Sterling Tech around midnight and used his security access to enter Marcus's building 47 minutes later. The timeline fit perfectly with the coroner's estimate of when Marcus had died. How did you access the building's security logs? Marcus gave me administrative access to the company's security systems for a project I was working on. I never thought to check the logs until yesterday, but when I did, David's access was right there in the database. Jenny, this is evidence of murder. We need to take it to the police. She shook her head. It's not that simple. David has been systematically deleting security records and access logs. By tomorrow, there might not be any evidence left. Then we need to get it to the authorities today. There's something else. I've been monitoring the Mirror development servers, and someone has been accessing Marcus's research files remotely. Not from within the Sterling Tech network, but from an outside location. Can you trace the access point? I tried, but the connection is routed through multiple proxy servers and VPN networks. Whoever is doing it knows how to cover their tracks. That suggested David Chen wasn't working alone. He had accomplices with sophisticated technical resources, possibly the same people behind Digital Horizons LLC. Jenny, I need you to copy all the evidence you've collected and store it somewhere safe. If something happens to you, I want to make sure the information survives. She nodded and pulled out a data storage device. I've already prepared copies. This contains the building access logs, the network intrusion records, and Marcus's complete research files on Mirror. I took the device and slipped it into my jacket pocket next to the mirror prototype. Between the two pieces of hardware, I had enough evidence to prove that Marcus Sterling had been murdered and that his killer was still stealing his research. "What are you going to do now?" Jenny asked. "I'm going to set a trap. David Chen thinks he's gotten away with murder, but he's about to discover that some secrets are harder to bury than others." We parted ways in the parking garage, Jenny heading back to the office and me driving toward downtown Los Angeles. I had enough evidence to take to the police, but I wanted to understand the full scope of the conspiracy before I made my move. The connection between David Chen and Digital Horizons was the key. If I could prove that Chen was selling stolen mirror technology through the shell company, I'd have motive for Marcus Sterling's murder. But I needed more than circumstantial evidence. I needed proof of the financial transactions. That meant another visit to Tommy Chen in Koreatown. Tommy was working on a laptop computer when I walked into his shop, his fingers flying over the keyboard as lines of code scrolled across the screen. "Back again so soon?" he said without looking up. "You must be onto something big." "Bigger than you know." I handed him the data storage device. "I need you to analyze the financial records on this drive. Look for connections between Sterling Tech and a shell company called Digital Horizons." Tommy plugged the device into his system and started examining its contents. "This is Sterling Tech's internal financial database. How did you get access to this?" "Better you don't know. Can you trace the Digital Horizons payments?" "Give me a few minutes." While Tommy worked, I called Detective Ray Santos at the LAPD. Ray and I had worked together when I was on the force, and he was one of the few cops I trusted to handle a case this sensitive. "William Harlow," Ray said when he answered the phone. "What kind of trouble are you stirring up now?" "The kind that involves murder, corporate espionage, and technology that could change the world." "You free for lunch?" "Depends. Are we talking about a case that's going to make me look good or get me transferred to traffic duty?" "Probably both." Ray agreed to meet me at a diner in Chinatown in 2 hours. That would give Tommy enough time to analyze the financial records and me enough time to organize my evidence into a coherent presentation. "Got something interesting here," Tommy said, calling me over to his workstation. "Digital Horizons LLC is definitely a shell company, but I was able to trace its funding back through several layers of corporate structures." "Where does the money come from?" "Multiple sources, defense contractors, private military companies, and what looks like foreign intelligence services. Someone has been collecting money from various interested parties and using Digital Horizons as a front to purchase mirror technology." "Can you identify the specific sources?" Tommy pointed to a series of financial transactions displayed on his screen. "Here's a payment from Blackwater Consulting. That's the private intelligence firm you mentioned earlier. This one comes from a German company that's probably a front for their intelligence service. And this large transfer originates from a bank in Switzerland that specializes in handling money for governments that don't want to be officially involved in certain transactions." The scope of the conspiracy was larger than I'd imagined. David Chen wasn't just selling mirror technology to the highest bidder. He was running an international intelligence operation, collecting money from multiple governments and organizations to fund the development of mind control technology. "There's something else," Tommy said. "The financial records show regular payments to a private military company called Titan Security Solutions. They specialize in corporate espionage and, according to rumors, assassination services." That explained the two men who had threatened me in the parking garage. They weren't working for Sterling Tech or even David Chen directly. They were professional contractors hired to eliminate threats to the mirror operation. "Tommy, I need you to copy all this information and store it in multiple secure locations. If something happens to me, I want this evidence to survive." "William, maybe it's time to turn this over to the authorities. You're dealing with people who have unlimited resources and no conscience." "I'm planning to, but first, I want to make sure David Chen doesn't have time to destroy the evidence or disappear." I left Tommy's shop with copies of the financial records and a growing sense that I was running out of time. David Chen knew I was investigating him, and sooner or later, he'd decide I was too dangerous to leave alive. But I had one advantage. He didn't know how much evidence I'd collected or how close I was to exposing his operation. If I could catch him off guard, I might be able to force a confession or at least gather enough additional evidence to ensure his conviction. The meeting with Detective Santos went better than I'd expected. Ray listened to my presentation without interrupting, examining the documents and technical evidence I'd collected. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and whistled softly. "This is some serious stuff, William. If even half of what you're telling me is true, we're looking at murder, conspiracy, and probably treason charges. What's our next move?" "Officially, I need to turn this over to the FBI and let them handle the national security aspects. Unofficially," he grinned, "I'd like to be the cop who arrests the bastard who thinks he can commit murder in my city." Ray agreed to coordinate with the federal authorities while I continued gathering evidence. We arranged to meet the next evening to plan David Chen's arrest, giving me 24 hours to tie up the remaining loose ends. I was driving back to my office when my phone rang. The caller ID showed Victoria Sterling's number. "Mr. Harlow, I just heard from the Sterling Tech Security Department. They said you were at the office today asking questions about David Chen." "That's right. I think he killed your husband." "You need to be careful. David just called me asking about your investigation. He seemed very concerned about what you might have discovered." That was interesting. If David Chen was worried enough to contact Victoria directly, it meant he was running scared. Scared people made mistakes, and mistakes were how cases got solved. "Victoria, I need you to do something for me. Can you arrange a meeting with David Chen tomorrow night? Tell him you want to discuss the future of Sterling Tech's security policies." "Why would I do that?" "Because I'm going to be there too. It's time to end this." The next 24 hours passed quickly. Ray Santos coordinated with the FBI, and they agreed to provide backup for David Chen's arrest. Jenny Liu copied additional evidence from the Sterling Tech servers before Chen could delete it, and I spent the time preparing for what I hoped would be the final confrontation. Victoria agreed to arrange the meeting at her Bel Air mansion, telling Chen she wanted to discuss restructuring the company's security department. He agreed to come at 8 p.m., probably thinking he could convince her to drop my investigation. He was about to discover how wrong he was. I arrived at Victoria's house an hour early, giving me time to position myself and test the recording equipment Detective Santos had provided. The FBI agents were stationed outside, ready to move in when I gave the signal. Victoria was nervous, pacing around her living room and checking the time every few minutes. "Are you sure this is going to work?" "Chen will come because he thinks he can control the situation. When he realizes he can't, he'll make mistakes. That's when we'll get the confession we need." David Chen arrived precisely at 8 p.m., driving the same black sedan I'd seen in the Sterling Tech parking garage. He walked up to the front door with the confidence of a man who thought he was in control of the situation. Victoria let him in, and I watched from the shadows as they exchanged pleasantries in the foyer. Chen was dressed in an expensive suit, and he carried himself with military precision. But I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his eyes scanned the room looking for potential threats. "Thank you for coming, David," Victoria said. "I wanted to discuss some changes to the company's security policies. Of course, though I should mention that I'm concerned about the private investigator you hired. William Harlow has been asking questions that could compromise our security protocols." "What kind of questions?" Chen moved into the living room, positioning himself so he could see all the entrances. "Questions about classified projects and confidential financial arrangements. I'm afraid he may be working for our competitors." That was my cue. I stepped out of the kitchen, my .38 in my hand, but pointed at the floor. "The only thing I'm working for is the truth," I said. Chen spun around, his hand moving toward his jacket, but he stopped when he saw the gun in my hand. "Mr. Harlow, this is an unexpected pleasure." "I doubt that. You've been expecting me since the day you murdered Marcus Sterling." "I'm afraid you're mistaken. Marcus committed suicide. The police investigation confirmed it. The police didn't have access to the building security logs, showing your keycard was used to enter Marcus's building the night he died. They didn't know about your shell company or your international clients. And they didn't have this." I pulled out the mirror prototype and set it on the coffee table. Chen's eyes fixed on it with the intensity of a man seeing his own death warrant. "Where did you get that?" "Marcus gave it to someone he trusted before you killed him, along with complete documentation of Project Mirror and evidence of your financial arrangements with Digital Horizons." Chen's professional mask finally slipped. His face went pale, and I could see him calculating his chances of fighting his way out of the situation. "You don't understand what you're dealing with," he said. "Mirror isn't just some corporate research project. It's the future of human society. The ability to influence behavior on a massive scale could prevent wars, eliminate poverty, create world peace. By controlling people's minds, by guiding their decisions toward better outcomes. Imagine a world where nobody made self-destructive choices, where everyone acted in their own best interests and the common good. And you get to decide what those interests are?" Chen moved closer, his voice taking on the fervor of a true believer. "Someone has to make those decisions. Someone has to have the wisdom and the will to guide humanity toward its better angels. Is that why you killed Marcus? Because he didn't share your vision. Marcus was weak. He had the greatest tool for human improvement ever created, and he wanted to destroy it because he was afraid of its power. I couldn't let that happen." Victoria had been silent during our exchange, but now she spoke up. "You murdered my husband for his research?" Chen turned to her, his expression almost pitying. "Your husband was going to set back human progress by decades. The FBI would have buried Mirror in some classified vault, and the world would have lost the chance to evolve beyond its current limitations. So you pushed him off his balcony?" I tried to reason with him first. I explained how Mirror could be used responsibly, how we could guide its development to benefit humanity. But he wouldn't listen. He was determined to expose the project and destroy everything we'd worked for. "We?" I asked. Chen realized he'd said too much, but it was too late to take it back. The consortium of visionaries who understood Mirror's true potential, government officials, military leaders, corporate executives, people with the wisdom to use this technology for the greater good. People who paid you millions of dollars through digital horizons. The funding was necessary to complete the project after Marcus threatened to shut it down. We were so close to a breakthrough that could reshape civilization. I could see the fanatic gleam in his eyes, the absolute certainty that made him dangerous. He really believed he was saving the world by controlling it. "How did you get into Marcus's building that night?" "My security clearance gave me access to all Sterling Tech properties, including Marcus's residential building. The company owned his penthouse as part of his compensation package." "And when you got there?" Chen's voice became matter-of-fact, as if he was describing a business transaction. "I tried one last time to convince him to continue the project. I offered him anything he wanted. More money, complete control over Mirror's development, guarantees that it would only be used for beneficial purposes. But he refused. He said he was going to turn over everything to the FBI the next morning. All our research, all our client relationships, everything. He was going to destroy years of work and billions of dollars of investment because he was afraid of progress. So you killed him." Chen's composure finally cracked completely. "It wasn't supposed to happen that way. I just wanted to convince him to reconsider. But he started threatening to call security, to have me arrested. In the struggle, he fell backward over the balcony railing." "That's not what happened," Victoria said quietly. "You pushed him." Chen turned to her, desperation replacing the fanatic certainty in his voice. "Victoria, you have to understand. Marcus's death wasn't meaningless. Mirror can still fulfill its promise. With your support, we can complete the project and give humanity the guidance it needs." "The only thing I'm going to give you is a life sentence," Victoria said. That's when Chen made his move. His hand went for the gun under his jacket, but I was ready for him. My .38 was up and aimed at his chest before he cleared his holster. "Don't be stupid, Chen. It's over." He froze with his gun half drawn, calculating whether he was fast enough to beat my trigger finger. After a long moment, he slowly reached into his jacket and pulled out his weapon, setting it on the floor and kicking it away. "You're making a mistake," he said. "Mirror is bigger than any of us. Even if you arrest me, the project will continue. Too many people have too much invested in its success." I reached for my phone to signal the FBI agents waiting outside. "Maybe so, but they'll have to do it without you." The arrest started that night and continued for 3 weeks. David Chen was charged with first-degree murder, conspiracy, and espionage. The FBI's investigation uncovered a network of foreign intelligence services, defense contractors, and private military companies that had been funding the Mirror project through Digital Horizons LLC. Jenny Liu became a government witness, turning over all of Sterling Tech's research files and helping the authorities understand the full scope of the mind control technology. She also testified about Chen's access to the security systems and his presence at Marcus Sterling's building the night he died. Victoria Sterling inherited full control of Sterling Tech and immediately shut down all research related to Project Mirror. She also established a foundation dedicated to the ethical development of artificial intelligence, using her husband's work as an example of how good intentions could be corrupted by unlimited ambition. The Mirror prototypes were confiscated by federal authorities and classified at the highest levels of government secrecy. According to official statements, the technology was too dangerous to exist and would never be developed or deployed. I wasn't entirely sure I believed that. Technology that powerful had a way of resurfacing, especially when there were people willing to pay any price to possess it. But at least Marcus Sterling's killer had been brought to justice, and the immediate threat had been neutralized. The case made headlines for about a week before the next scandal pushed it off the front pages. Corporate espionage and murder weren't unusual enough to hold the public's attention for long, especially when the technical details were too classified to report. But I knew the truth, and so did the people who mattered. Marcus Sterling had died trying to prevent his creation from being used to control human minds, and his sacrifice had stopped, at least temporarily, one of the most dangerous technologies ever developed. A month later, I was sitting in my office reading the newspaper when Tommy Chen called. "William, you might want to see this," he said. "I've been monitoring some dark web forums, and there are rumors that someone is trying to reconstruct the Mirror technology from incomplete data files." "Any idea who?" "Not yet, but whoever it is, they have serious resources, and they're offering big money for anyone who worked on the original project." I folded the newspaper and looked out at the city. The rain had stopped, but the sky was still gray, with the promise of more storms to come. Somewhere out there, other people were probably trying to build their own version of Marcus Sterling's mind control system. The case was closed, but the story wasn't over. It never really is in this business. You solve one puzzle only to discover it was part of a larger picture, one that stretches beyond the horizon of any single investigation. But that's a problem for another day. Today I had done what Victoria Sterling hired me to do. I'd found her husband's killer and brought him to justice. In a city where justice was a rare commodity, that was worth something. I poured myself a drink and watched the sunset over Los Angeles, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. Tomorrow would bring new cases, new secrets, new lies to unravel. But tonight, the truth had won a small victory against the darkness. In this business, sometimes that's the best you can hope for. 6 months later, I got a call from Detective Santos. David Chen had been found dead in his federal prison cell, apparently killed by another inmate during what the guards described as a routine altercation. The official cause of death was listed as accidental trauma, but Ray and I both knew better. Someone had decided Chen knew too much about the Mirror conspiracy. Even behind bars, he'd been a liability to people with the resources to reach anyone, anywhere. The investigation into his death was perfunctory. Prison violence was common enough that nobody looked too closely at one more dead convict, especially one convicted of treason and murder. The case was closed within a week, but Chen's death confirmed what I'd suspected all along. The Mirror project was bigger than any single person or company. There were powerful interests that would do anything to control mind manipulation technology, including murder. Anyone who threatened to expose their operations. I kept the Mirror prototype locked in my office safe, a reminder of how close humanity had come to surrendering its free will to a machine. Sometimes late at night when the city was quiet, I'd take it out and look at it, marveling at how something so small could contain so much potential for evil. The device never worked again after Tommy's analysis, some kind of built-in security feature that destroyed its functionality if it was tampered with. But I kept it anyway, a talisman against the darkness that lurked in the hearts of men who believed they knew better than the rest of us how we should think and feel and live. Victoria Sterling sold Sterling Tech 6 months after her husband's murder trial concluded. She moved to Europe and disappeared from public view, taking with her the memory of a man who had died trying to prevent his greatest creation from enslaving the world. And somewhere in the shadows of corporate boardrooms and government facilities, other researchers were probably working on new versions of Project Mirror, convinced that they could succeed where Marcus Sterling had failed. Not by being more moral, but by being more careful. The future was coming whether we were ready for it or not, carrying with it technologies that could liberate humanity or destroy it completely. The only question was whether we'd have the wisdom to choose correctly when the time came. In my line of work, I'd learned not to bet on human wisdom, but sometimes, just sometimes, the good guys won. Marcus Sterling had proven that much. One honest man could make a difference, even if it cost him everything. That was worth remembering in a city where memory was just another commodity to be bought and sold to the highest bidder. I put the mirror prototype back in the safe and poured myself another drink. Outside my window, Los Angeles glittered in the darkness. 10 million souls going about their lives, making their own choices, thinking their own thoughts. For now, that was enough. Thank you for watching The Silicon Shadow. If you enjoyed this William Harlow mystery, please like and subscribe to the channel for more noir detective stories set in our digital age.
Imagine just for a second a technology that could predict your next thought, and then maybe subtly nudge you towards a decision without you even noticing. What if that wasn't just, science fiction? What if it was a secret project happening, like right now or very soon? Today, we're doing a deep dive into The Silicon Shadow. It's a fictional detective story, but wow, it uncovers this really advanced AI, one designed for, well, a pretty chilling form of mind control. Our mission today is to unpack this story, pull out the key details about this terrifying tech, the conspiracy around it, and really grapple with the big questions it raises about, free will and power. So picture this. Rainy Los Angeles, 2025. Not too far off, we meet William Harlow, a private eye. He seems pretty world-weary, nursing some synthetic coffee. And to his office walks Victoria Sterling. She's the widow of this tech mogul, Marcus Sterling. Now, Marcus's death, officially, it was suicide. But Victoria, she's not buying it. She insists he was murdered.
Yeah, it's got that classic noir feel, doesn't it? The rain, the PI, the mysterious widow. But what's really interesting here is how it slams that vibe right up against this near-future tech setting. It's not just about the usual shadows and dark alleys. It's about these invisible shadows cast by technology, sort of hinting right away that there's something deeper, maybe more dangerous, lurking beneath the surface.
And Victoria gets straight to it. She drops the first real bombshell. Marcus was about to expose something terrible called Project Mirror.
Project Mirror. Okay, so based on the whispers Harlow starts digging up, this wasn't just some new app. It was supposedly an AI system. And it didn't just predict what people might do. Its real frightening potential was in influencing behavior. Think of it like mind control tailored for the digital age almost.
Okay, influencing decisions. That's a huge leap. Where do you think the line gets crossed there? Is it just predicting, or is it that nudge? When does it become truly problematic?
Well, that's exactly the knot this story tries to untangle, isn't it? It goes beyond just gathering data. It's about actively, if subtly, manipulating things, creating this personalized reality bubble for everyone. The second an algorithm stops just reflecting what you like and starts, shaping what you like, that's where free will really starts to feel compromise.
So Victoria gives Harlow his first piece of the puzzle, an encrypted data chip. She says she can't access it, and adds this kicker. Marcus was supposed to meet the FBI the day after he died.
Right. Not exactly subtle timing.
Definitely not. So Harlow's got this chip, military-grade encryption. He needs help. He takes it to his go-to tech guy, Tommy Chen, a real computer whiz. And Tommy clacks it. And what he finds inside?
Yeah.
Well, that's when the true scale of Project Mirror starts coming into focus.
And what Tommy finds is, frankly, chilling. Project Mirror was absolutely real and incredibly sophisticated. It could hoover up your entire digital life, social media, shopping, searches, even biometric data from your smartwatch or whatever, and use all that to build a psychological profile with, get this, 97% accuracy. That's not just pattern recognition. That suggests an AI that understands psychological triggers, biases, deeply personal stuff.
97%. Wow. Okay. So prediction is one thing, alarming enough. But then Marcus found out it could influence people actively. How would that even work?
So the decrypted files laid it out. Mirror's real breakthrough was this bespoke manipulation. It could subtly change the information you see, like tweak your search results just a bit, alter your social media feed, maybe even rewrite parts of news articles you're reading, all in real time, all designed to nudge you towards a certain decision or a specific belief.
Without you knowing. Exactly. Completely insidious. People could be swayed on what to buy, who to vote for, maybe even how they feel about friends or partners, all while thinking they're making their own free choices. It's a fundamental attack on autonomy, really.
And the client list Tommy found, even scarier. Defense contractors, political consultancies, foreign intelligence agencies, big corporations, too. They weren't just buying data analysis. They were effectively buying the power to shape thoughts and actions on potentially a massive scale.
Which just throws open this huge question, right? What does society even look like if powerful groups can literally mold public opinion and behavior like that? It changes everything. Democracy, markets, personal freedom. Our whole reality could become curated.
So Harlow digs deeper. He heads to Sterling Tech headquarters, naturally gets the runaround from the lawyers. Standard procedure. But then he finds an inside source, a young programmer named Jenny Liu. She was actually Marcus Sterling's mentee. And Jenny gives this crucial inside look. She says Marcus was getting really uncomfortable. Apparently, outside inventors were pushing hard to accelerate Mirror's development. They wanted to be more aggressive in its psychological influence, even wanted to target specific groups of people. Marcus suspected it was coming from a board member, someone with intelligence connections, hinting at something much bigger than just business.
Jenny confirms Marcus was horrified. He saw Mirror had become not some helpful tool, but he actually called it a weapon. He was dead set on taking it all to the FBI. And then she gives Harlow something unbelievable, a Mirror prototype, a portable version. She calls it pocket mind control.
Pocket mind control. I mean, that phrase just lands heavily, doesn't it? Makes it personal, immediate. So Harlow, understandably, takes this device straight to an expert he trusts, Dr. Sarah Martinez, an AI specialist. And Sarah confirms the worst. It's terrifyingly capable. He can apparently track micro-expressions, body language, build psych profiles on the fly. Then it links up with nearby devices wirelessly to feed you tailored information. Sarah calls it the ultimate weapon of mass manipulation. She literally says it could be the end of free will as we know it.
Chilling.
Yeah.
And Sarah finds something else, too. The prototypes themselves. They were being manufactured by Sterling Tech, which suggests they weren't just building this for clients. They were gearing up for a bigger production run, maybe planning to deploy it themselves.
That's a really crucial piece. It shifts the whole picture, doesn't it? It suggests Sterling Tech itself, or, powerful people within it, plan to wield this power direct, not just sell the service, but actually use it on a large scale, maybe globally.
Right, so as Harlow gets closer to the truth, things get dangerous, really dangerous. He starts getting tailed, professionals. Then direct threats. The stakes are suddenly very real, very physical. And under all this pressure, Victoria Sterling finally cracks a little, admits she held back. She tells Harlow about Marcus's last call, frantic, and how Marcus suspected David Chen, the head of Sterling Tech Security, who seemed, pretty unremarkable until then.
It's an interesting turn for Victoria. You see her move from maybe seeming a bit deceptive to someone clearly terrified, but also wanting justice for Marcus. It really humanizes the impact of this tech conspiracy, shows the real fear and the tough choices people face when caught up in something so huge and abstract.
And then Jenny Liu comes through with the clincher, the final damning evidence. She saw David Chen's car leaving the Sterling Tech parking garage late on the night Marcus died, midnight-ish, and here's the key, his security key card. It was used to get into Marcus's apartment building just 47 minutes before the official time of death. Plus, Jenny found records showing Chen had been systematically wiping security logs and accessing Marcus's private research files remotely.
That's the smoking gun, basically. The timeline, the physical presence, the digital cover-up, it puts Chen right there.
Yeah.
And the remote access, the deleted files. That screams coordination. It suggests Chen wasn't just some lone actor having a breakdown. He was likely part of a much larger, much more sophisticated operation. Cleaning up tracks.
Then Tommy Chen, the tech whiz again, digs into the shell company Jenny mentioned, Digital Horizons LLC. He traces the money. And the sources. Wow. Blackwater Consulting connected to a German intel front, a Swiss bank known for handling covert government cash. And Titan Security Solutions, a private military company with rumors of offering assassination services.
Okay, so let's connect those dots. This paints a very stark picture, doesn't it? David Chen wasn't just head of security. He was running an international intelligence op, funded by governments, shadowy groups, all focused on getting their hands on Project Mirror. This is way beyond corporate secrets. It's a global conspiracy hiding in plain sight.
So Harlow knows who it is. He sets a trap at Victoria's mansion, and it works. David Chen walks right into it, leading to this dramatic confession. And Chen, he's not repentant, he's a fanatic. He truly believes Mirror is the future, claims it can stop wars and poverty by guiding everyone's decisions for the better.
And that's the ultimate chilling justification, isn't it? The idea that taking away free will is actually for the greater good. He saw Marcus as weak, naive for wanting to destroy it, couldn't see the big picture. Chen admits there was a struggle. Marcus fell backward over the balcony railing, confirms the murder, and he also confirms this consortium of visionaries, officials, military brass, CEOs were funding him through digital horizons. This utopian vision built on total control. Maybe that's the scariest part of all.
So, the immediate fallout. Chen is arrested. Murder 1, conspiracy, espionage, the works. Jenny Liu testifies, becomes a key government witness. Victoria Sterling gets control of the company, immediately shuts down all Mirror research. Good for her. She even starts a foundation for ethical AI. The prototypes. Confiscated by the feds, classified top secret, basically declared too dangerous to even exist.
So it feels like justice is served, right? The bad guy caught, the dangerous tech contained. For now, but if we're looking at the bigger picture, stories involving tech this powerful, they rarely just end cleanly like that. These kinds of genies are hard to put back in the bottle.
And the story leans into that ambiguity, absolutely. 6 months later, David Chen is found dead in his cell, officially ruled accidental trauma. But the implication is clear. Silenced by the people he worked for. Victoria Sterling sells Sterling Tech and just vanishes.
Which leaves us with that lingering, really uncomfortable question. Does technology this powerful ever truly go away? Or does it just sort of sink deeper underground? The story ends hinting that, rumors are already swirling on the dark web, attempts to rebuild Mirror from leftover data fragments, and apparently there are serious resources behind these attempts. That confiscated prototype. It sits there inert, but as a constant chilling reminder for Harlow, and for us, really. A reminder that the idea of this control, once it's out there, is incredibly hard to kill.
You know, Marcus Sterling paid the ultimate price, and his sacrifice did stop the specific conspiracy. It shelved Project Mirror, temporarily at least. But the fact that Project Mirror could even be conceived, let alone built, it forces you listening to ask some hard questions. In a world that's getting more technologically advanced by the second, how careful do we need to be? How do we make sure that tools designed just to influence us don't creep across the line into tools of absolute control? And maybe the biggest question, how do we protect our own free will when faced with a seductive promise, often well-intentioned, of a better future guided purely by algorithms? It's a challenge the Silicon Shadow makes feel incredibly real, and it's something we're definitely going to be dealing with more and more.